Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And a very good morning to you and top of the week indeed. This is Newsline. We're live from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And to start the week's proceedings, we've got here an update on a most important aspect of our economy, tourism. And we've got the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Chief right here, live in the studio, Mr. Johan Jayaratne. Very good morning to you, Johan.
Good morning to you, Faraz.
And thank you for coming here and hopefully giving us an update on as to how our tourism is doing, especially because we're just several weeks ahead of the proper season, isn't it?
That's correct.
So how are we doing?
We're doing well, all things considered.
Okay.
The volumes are coming in. They're growing on a monthly basis. But however, the financial recovery will take a little bit longer. We're looking at about an 18-month to 2-year period post-incident. But as far as the numbers are concerned, just to give you an idea, we are at about 1.267 million arrivals as of now, as of the end of August.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. We are quite happy about that because we are registering a drop of about 19.9% over the last year during the same period. Last year,
so year on year, we're down?
Well, this year, last year up to August, we had 1.582 million. And this year it's 1.267 million. So the drop is about 19.9%.
But in terms of numbers, we're doing quite well.
We are doing very well. We are doing very well. I mean, just to give you some idea, an idea, right after the incident in May, we had a 70.8% drop.
Right.
That reduced to 57% in June, and in July it was 46.9%.
Yeah.
And in August it dropped down to 28.3% from a negative perspective.
Right.
So I'm expecting by about end October to November on that we will equalize with the numbers that arrived in 2018.
I see.
With a projection of about just over 2 million tourist arrivals for 2019 as opposed to 2.33 million in 2018.
Right.
So numbers-wise, I think we are looking okay. But as I said, the financial recovery will take a little bit longer.
Okay. And what about facilities, let's say at the airport and so on? I know you're not at the airport anymore, but now that you're out and you're from the other side, you're looking in, what do you think?
Well, there is congestion at the airport, but at the same time, the airport authorities are doing their best to increase the footprint of the terminal building itself.
Right.
There's some new aircraft parking facilities coming up that are being built right now. So it will help to ease the congestion to some extent, but it will not eliminate the congestion at all at this point in time. However, the second terminal is being discussed quite seriously right now, and I'm hoping that they will have that up and running within the next 3 to 4 years.
Oh, really? As early as that?
Yes, that's the expectation and that's the projection. So we are hoping.
And how will that be funded?
It'll be through JICA funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because obviously we also know that the economy is very slow and staid at the moment.
Yes, it is.
Overall.
Yeah.
So okay, you're happy about the arrival figures, but what about the spend into what about the occupancy levels in all these?
That has always been a point of contention since the incident. But if you look at Colombo, the general feedback that we're getting is about a 30 to 40% occupancy.
Yeah.
And there is also some discussion about most of these arrivals going into the informal sector, that is the facilities that are not registered with the development authority.
Yeah.
That being said, after all, after an incident of this nature, building up the volume is what is critical from a national perspective. So that is there. But then again, it is the formal sector that actually reports in.
Right.
So those numbers may not reflect the reality that is out there at the moment.
I see. How's the message going across to the world? How's that happening?
It's very positive, and we launched the Tourism Promotion Bureau launched the CNN advertising campaign as of last Friday. So that will have a very positive impact, and also the Promotion Bureau is in the process of identifying 12 markets where they will invest 100 million rupees each, and those will be to the target audiences mostly in Europe. So those will have a positive effect down the line.
When we're talking about tourism, and I know it's split into about what, four
entities,
parts.
yeah.
Is that a good thing?
Here again, there are two schools of thought on that, because originally it was the tourism board and it becomes Sri Lanka Tourism, and now it's the Tourism Development Authority, which is the regulator and the authority. And then you have the Promotions Bureau doing the promotions work. Then we have the Conventions Bureau doing the MICE tourism and the convention work. And then we have the Institute of Tourism and Hotel Management that does all the training.
Right.
So in one way, it's good.
Yeah.
As long as the cohesiveness and the interactions are in place, that's what is critical, and that is there now. That is there now.
And on Newsline, we encourage you to send us your questions live by SMS, please, to 0772 300 305, card coming up on your screen shortly. And of course, we are in conversation with the chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, Mr. Johan Jayaratne. And you can send those questions straight through to us by SMS, please, 0772 300 305. So, Johan, you're quite happy. The arrival figures are going up. The occupancies are contentious.
They are increasing, but not at the speed that the industry would like. But yet for all, I mean, we did suffer quite a horrendous
How long do you think the hotels are going to take to get out of this?
Financial recovery, like I said, will probably be close to 2 years from post-incident date, yes.
And yet I see that there are various hotels still being developed and so on.
Yeah, I mean, the industry is very optimistic. I mean, we were voted, #1 by Lonely Planet, and Travel and Leisure voted us pretty high as well. So the level of enthusiasm worldwide is very apparent, and we have the empathy of the world, and I mean, things have worked out very well from that perspective. So we must be resilient. We must be persevering in capturing the global market like we've always done.
And what's our biggest market? India, I suppose.
India, as of in August, it was India.
Right.
And it has consistently been that way.
And what does that mean? What does that say? Are the Indians more understanding of the problems because we're just a little bit away?
Yes, I would imagine so. They're more resilient to this type of incidents than the Europeans, for example.
Right.
And the Chinese market tends to be a little conservative when it comes to things of this nature. So,
given what happened on 21/4, the arrival of about 20,000 people from the Bora community.
Yes,
that was a huge boost.
Yes, that was a leg up for us in the month of September, because towards the end of August all the way through the beginning of October is considered the low season, if you may, for the lack of a better term. It's not really a season; it's just that the entire global market goes back to work and school and so on and so forth. So it's a bit of a lull in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
So this helped to boost the numbers up in September to some extent. But of course, September we will see a drop when compared to August.
How much does political instability, or like elections coming along and so on, and how much of that plays a part, do you think?
It tends to play a large role, globally when it comes to political stability in a country that people travel to. That being said, the expectation is that the elections will go smoothly, and that will also show that the country is stable, and that we are back to business as usual. So that's the hope of the industry.
Mm-hmm. And in some areas, are you all doing anything very special perhaps in the former conflict areas and so on to encourage tourism? Or
Absolutely. There are a lot of programs there. The Enterprise Sri Lanka, things of that nature are happening, taking place, and they're moving along.
Happy,
yes.
Okay.
They could be better, but that being said, I mean, something is happening.
And these minimum rates in the Colombo hotels,
They don't exist anymore.
They don't exist.
No.
Are they gone forever?
Probably.
Is that a good thing to have them or not?
Well, competition is always good.
Right.
Competition is always good, but there also has to be some kind of a standard, and we need to make sure that those are in place.
Right. So what's the way forward? How do you see this whole thing panning out?
Well, I would like to say that the recovery, the so-called recovery period, we are beyond that now. It's a question of building up the markets and building up the confidence and, you know, getting the rates to where they were, and making sure that the volume remains, you know, on the growth trajectory, and then bringing in the value proposition into it.
Right. And what about, we had somebody from the Weligama area the other day, the chairman of the urban council there, but he wasn't able to tell us too much about Mirisa because that comes under something else. But what is happening out there? What will, are you all licensing them? Because there lots of people were closed down.
Yes, you mean because of the incident?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
following the incident.
yeah, following the incident. The thing is, a lot of these small to medium-sized enterprises were hard hit, and even though the government, you know, came in with a lot of relief packages and moratoriums and so on, it didn't quite, you know, cascade down to the small to medium-sized, you know, entities as much as they would have liked it to. So we are constantly, you know, fighting that battle as we go along, and making sure that they do stay in, you know, business going forward. But at the same time, for us, what is interesting is that some of these businesses went out of business within days and weeks of the incident. So I would like to point out that, you know, the risk mitigation and risk management aspects of a business operation were not particularly followed. So we are very closely monitoring that aspect of it, and trying to come up with some sort of an informational, instructional, you know, program to help these business entities to regain confidence in the industry.
And these, how's your registration process? Well, we have a message coming through to say that most of those establishments in Mirisa and around that area are not really registered with the tourism development or with the Sri Lanka tourism. And so, and they sort of operate independently outside of the registration by signing up with online agencies like Booking.com and so on.
That's a very good comment that you received. Yes, I would say over 50% of the business entities fall into what we call the informal sector or the non-registered sector, if you may. So we're trying to bring them, you know, into the fold of registration and licensing. And what happened post-incident was that the government was offering these relief packages to those entities that were registered with the Development Authority. And as a result, we had about close to 1,400 applications coming in from these entities to be registered in order to get the relief packages. So we are hoping to continue with that process without any penalties or anything of that nature, just to make them come in and become a part of the registered process so that we can maintain a very good standard across the board.
What about little, I call little, I say little businesses, but you know, they're quite big businesses on the beaches there. There's various people who offer surfing, you know, surfing operators, if you like. Are they registered?
Some of them are, but not by any means a majority of them.
How does it work though? How do you coordinate? Do you have to go down to the local council level, the urban council?
Yes. Essentially, the provincial councils do have some sort of an interest in the tourism industry. They have a special, you know, area or section, if you may. So it's through them and like you said, the urban councils and so on that we get all these entities, you know, into the mix.
And somebody's asking, what can you do about the inconvenience that tourists and others anyway also undergo when public transport and so on are disrupted by strikes?
That's once again a very good question. I mean, we as tourism, we really don't have much of a say in the matter, but we're hoping that all these problems will be resolved because they will have a negative impact on tourism. Because, for instance, I mean, rail transport is something that tourists have begun to enjoy, and these disruptions don't help at all.
All public offices are on strike today, another message tells me.
Yes, I just heard about it this morning. I mean, these are not good indicators, but you know, we must stay positive. I mean, that's all we can do, and hope that these things get resolved very soon, because I don't think tourism can take another hit at this time. So we need to be very conscientious of that.
And I have about five messages, all to do with the same thing, and which is there anything that you, as the tourism regulator, can do to encourage the ambassadors of the airport, also known as immigration officers, to smile a little bit more instead of sitting there like plum puddings? I'm quoting one of these messages.
Right. We have worked with them consistently over the years, and even when I was with Airport Aviation, I mean, this was always a point of contention. But however, I must say that things have improved to some extent from what they were maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, I've got no problem. I can honestly say that I haven't had much negativity on that aspect, but the message is coming in.
No, I mean,
suggest
it's a very true statement made by one of the viewers. I agree that it could be much better. It could be much better, but then again, I think it's a worldwide phenomenon when it comes to that particular, sector.
Yes, maybe they haven't travelled to Thailand recently or somewhere like that, because they're rather stern. That's the
Right,
term.
right, yeah.
But our viewers are suggesting that in the land of smiles, it's lacking from the ambassador. These are the people, the first to interact with our visitors and the last as well.
Absolutely.
So
it's a mindset that has to change, and it'll take a little bit of time because it's a cultural issue rather than a structural issue. So we consistently go through.
But culturally, we smile.
Yes, true. But when it comes to this particular, enterprise of immigration, I suppose it's a little different because it is also a law enforcement type of a function. So.
Yeah.
But all things being said, it's much better than what it used to be. So we're happy about that.
People are asking, how can you develop Sri Lanka's tourism to a higher level? And they're asking, someone asking here, does having more casinos and nightclubs like in Thailand, Hong Kong, Singapore have a greater impact increasing the inflow of tourism than other factors that we have?
Once again, excellent questions. To answer your first, with regard to improving our tourism, I think it's a question of packaging and positioning of our product, whether it be the adventure tourism or health tourism or leisure, beaches, whatever it might be. I think we need to look at it a little differently. I happened to be at a tea tasting function just a couple of weeks ago, and and they were talking about it not being just Ceylon tea anymore. It should be about the beverage itself and having different concoctions based on tea, that type of thing. So the positioning and the product itself has to take on a different look and feel. With regard to the numbers, now I was studying the Thai model, for instance. They are attracting about 38 million tourists annually with a revenue base of about 65 billion US. And what they have done is they've transformed themselves from a I would say from a volume-based industry to a value-based industry, and that's what we should look at. Rather than look at numbers, we should look at value.
The viewer who's talking about one of them who talk about immigration is rather insistent. Teach them their manners, like in Singapore, etc. Are you going to have a chat with the top man at immigration?
Yes, you see, the management is very, very open to these type of suggestions. They know the pitfalls that passengers face coming in, and I know that they're working very hard to take this message across to the officers on the front line and make them kind of to actually make them aware.
But they're also the first line when it comes to the firing squad, especially if they make a mistake and let in a terrorist or somebody like that.
True. But all things being equal, I mean, being humane about an arriving passenger or a departing passenger is a critical necessity in a country that's tourism oriented. So I agree with your view on this.
All right. So, what do you say? Is this government doing enough? I know you're sort of an extension of government, if you like, but upfront and open. How frustrating is it at times?
What is frustrating is not particularly the government or the politicians or whatever of that nature. What is frustrating is that the mechanism that we have to adhere to or work with. can be a stumbling block sometimes going forward. Case in point is this incident that we faced. We were not able to react fast enough to get us out of that immediate, crisis mode, simply because of all the archaic systems that we have in place. So these have to be changed, and whatever the governing body that comes in or continues has to address this issue, because we are dealing with very, very archaic regulations and circulars. I mean, this is something that has been discussed many a time, over and over again. So the bureaucracy has to be, managed. I read somewhere that, for every 1,000 citizens in this country, we have over 50 public servants or something to that effect. So that ratio is rather high. So we need to be able to control that.
And what about standards, in hygiene and so on? When we're looking at street food, that sort of thing, things that the tourists are looking at and they want to experience. How do you all how do you all get involved as the tourism regulator in that way?
Our involvement is minimal at this point, and this is something that we really, really have to focus on, because standardization of this type of service is critical in order to, gain confidence in the country as a destination. So this is something that we are working with very, very aggressively to kind of bring everybody together and giving awareness to the necessity of having these standards in place.
And someone is asking about the drawing a conclusion about the or a question. For example, they say that in Kotte a couple of weeks ago, at a Perahera, a elephant went amok, pointing out that these things could have if it happened, let's say Kandy, and where it was more attended by tourists, then we would have another tourism disaster in the making.
Once again, absolutely right, because I mean these are things that have to be managed and controlled, and I think the wildlife department is once again going through some investigations about the use of elephants in these parades, and we heard about the elephant that was in very bad shape, and I mean there are some regulations being thought of and discussed at the moment. So I'm hoping that all of these things will come to light very soon.
Right, and from your perspective, what would you like to see the industry doing? I mean, it's not all about government. What about from the flip side?
The industry has been very proactive. Wherever the government couldn't kind of meet the requirement of the day, the industry did step in, and there were a lot of private sector initiatives that were taken to kind of get us out of this rut that we are in, and we are ever so grateful to the industry for that. Going forward, I would like to see the industry along with Sri Lanka tourism, work closer together than what we have been in looking at this entire industry, holistically, and seeing how best that we can work together to get it to where it should be. And I think it is underutilized as an industry. I think there's so much more that can be done.
Do you have the regulator and your promotions division and so on? Do you all have any central sort of reservation system?
Yes, thanks for bringing that point up for us. Now, with regard to the Tourism Development Authority being the regulator and the authority, we are going to have a reservation system for our resorts in place very soon. It's an automated system. We have also put in a one-day service for renewal of licenses to all business entities that are registered with us. Thirdly, we are looking at complete automation of the standards and quality assurance division, if you may, so that there's going to be minimal human intervention when it comes to the actual licensing process of a new business. This will quicken the process and take away any kind of negativities that.
What about a central reservation system for tourists or for visitors, so that not many small entities are able to pay the fees imposed by online
Booking
agencies.
Yes, once again, good point. That has been addressed, and we are hoping to come up with a common platform for the small to medium-sized enterprises, where it'll kind of replicate that of Booking.com or whatever, but it'll be a localized booking engine where anyone can log in and take care.
Because a lot of them also have difficulties in getting themselves registered to accept, payment cards.
Payment
and
cards,
so on.
yeah. So that the common platform will address that, and we are working on it from a technical perspective as well, and hopefully we'll have it up and running within the next 6 to 8 months is the projection.
I see.
Yeah.
And how much are you all doing towards attracting people to work in the industry in terms of getting training and so on? I know you have a school, but that school on its own, I don't know if that's enough in terms of...
Well, that's not the only school in Sri Lanka. There are a lot of schools that are propping up all over.
Yeah.
And
all under your purview?
Not under our purview. But what we're trying to do is, once again, localize that process to some extent so that all schools have a similar standard going forward and in putting, people out there into the industry. And the industry, I'm happy to say that the industry now has turned to these schools looking for new recruits because, soon after the incident, a lot of people, lost their jobs or they moved overseas.
But most of the hotels, and especially the new ones, when they come up, instead of having a database of people that they can choose from, they just embark on the easiest thing going. They pinch them from the other hotels. So you're suddenly wondering if you're in the right hotel because you've seen all these familiar faces move along. So how can you address this? How can you standardize the training in all these schools so that in effect the nearest hotel school is the best hotel school rather than they all try to come into the one place?
Now if you look at the hotel school that comes under Sri Lanka Tourism, I mean they have numerous locations island-wide, but that being said there are other private institutions as well coming through, and like you correctly said, we need to regulate these and bring in some sort of a standardization into the process, and then build this database that you spoke of, so that people have the option of going and selecting a person who has pre-qualified for that particular position.
I mean, they can do what the sort of the Korean system, which is that you match. You have a database of people who are needed and another one that's available. So you just marry them up.
Sure. So these are all projects that are in the works. But like all good things, it'll take a little bit of time. But it's very much in the happening.
Right. And do you think it will? Because we've 70 coming along to 72 years of after independence. We're sort of stuck in the $4,000 per capita GDP, which is always historically we've seen it all over the world. It's always we're sort of stuck in a rut at the moment, and we need to jump over that and move forward.
Absolutely. I have two points that I would like to bring up on that particular subject. I mean, tourism should be the #1 foreign exchange earner coming into the country. Tourism. And in order to get that, I think we should concentrate more on the value proposition than the volume proposition that we are working with right now. It's not about getting 2.5 million or 4 million tourists into the country. If we were to set a target of $10 billion by such and such a date, and then work towards it and let that cascade down to the level of services and the way we position the product and so on, I think we'll be more successful than going for the numbers game.
Have you factored in the corruption in between?
Yes, I mean it's very prevalent, and it has to be managed and or at least minimized. I don't think we can ever eradicate it completely, but minimized to a great extent, and we are working on that. We are working on that by way of we have an enforcement division or an arm within the Sri Lanka Tourism Development, and we are beefing that operation up so that we can go and take a look at what's going on out there and bring these things to a stop.
And how's that little spoken of division doing, the Sri Lanka Police, Tourism Police?
Yes, that's what I mentioned as far as beefing that up and making sure that they are equipped to do what they're supposed to do, and that is where they're lacking right now.
Well, the future is looking very bright indeed for Sri Lanka tourism. Thank you for doing what you do, and also for coming on the program and giving us an update. We haven't forgotten, in between all the politics and so on that's going on, we haven't forgotten, the network hasn't forgotten that people in some industries, especially also including the tourism industry, have been struggling post 21/4, and so we thought we'd have Mr. Jaratna up here and tell us what the progress is, and it's looking quite good, Mr. Jaratna. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Faraz.
It's a great pleasure on behalf of News First. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's the way it was on News First today, on News First, the Newsline program today. Thank you. Take care. Have a wonderful week ahead. And of course, God bless.
News First Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.